In the Alien films, the xenomorph's blood isn't just blood, it's a weapon. A hyper-corrosive acid that melts through metal decks in seconds. A single drop slices through steel like butter, making these creatures not only very difficult to kill, but still as deadly after death. But here's the real question. Could any biological organism, real or hypothetical in sci-fi, actually have acid for blood? Today we'll explore this through the lenses of chemistry, biology, evolution, and maybe even a little astrobiology. By the end, we'll know whether acid for blood is pure nightmare fuel for sci-fi or something that might, just maybe, exist in the universe. To begin with, we need to define what we mean by acid for blood. In chemistry, an acid is any substance that can donate protons. The acidity of a substance is measured by pH, where lower values mean stronger acidity. Lemon juice, for example, sits at around pH 2.5. Vinegar is similar. Our stomach acid, hydrochloric acid, is pH 1 to 2. That's strong enough to dissolve metal razor blades, though it happens very slowly. The sulfuric acid used in car batteries sits at around pH 0.3. Very concentrated sulfuric acid can be lower still. But in the Alien films and TV series, we're looking at something far stronger, what's known as a superacid. These are exotic chemical mixtures, substances such as fluoroantimonic acid, which is about 10 quadrillion times stronger than sulfuric acid, or a pH of around minus 30. Such acids don't just dissolve metals, they rip apart anything organic or inorganic on contact. If xenomorphs truly had such chemistry flowing through their veins, they'd be carrying around one of the most destructive substances known. So, when we say acid for blood, we're talking about something well beyond normal biology. It's blood with the corrosive power of industrial or laboratory superacids. The question, therefore, is whether nature could make, store, and use such a substance without destroying itself. This might sound impossible, but nature in real life already has examples of organisms wielding dangerous acids. Ants, for example, produce and spray formic acid which burns predators and other insects. This is about pH 1. Bombardier beetles mix chemicals to create an explosive boiling spray which includes acids, and this spray is around pH 4. Plants like stinging nettles inject formic acid through tiny hairs on the edge of leaves, and this is pH of 2-ish. And as we said earlier, even humans use acid. Our stomachs produce hydrochloric acid strong enough to kill bacteria and break down food. In extreme environments, microbes known as extremophiles generate sulfuric acid as part of their metabolism, allowing them to extract energy from the sulfide rocks around them. But in all these cases, acids are contained in biological compartments. Ants have specialized glands, protected by a mucus lining. Even extremophile microbes separate their acidic waste products from the sensitive proteins inside the cell. And that's the key point. Biology can make acid, but it usually has to keep it carefully isolated. Free-flowing acid in the bloodstream would mean that every cell, every enzyme, and every membrane is under constant chemical attack. So, could cells survive acidic blood? Human blood has a pH of around 7.35, so ever so slightly alkaline, and this pH is incredibly stable. If your blood pH drops even half a point, you can slip into acidosis and die. The proteins in our body are extremely sensitive to acidity. Their three-dimensional shapes collapse if the pH moves outside a very narrow range. So for acid blood to exist, life would need a completely different protein toolkit. Such an alien organism would need acid-resistant proteins, which would need to be stabilized by unusual chemical bonds. Proteins would need to cross-link with things like disulfide bridges, or maybe some different exotic amino acids would be required to possibly survive such a low pH. Such alien organisms would need different cell membranes, built from acid-repelling materials, instead of lipid bilayers like our human cells, which would dissolve in extreme pH. They might use polymers which act more like Teflon. And such alien organisms would also need some sort of internal neutralization mechanism. Cells which should keep their internal environment neutral while surrounding themselves with an acid armour. The fact is, some extremophile microbes already do this. Living in hot springs with a pH below 1, their outer membranes resist acid while their cytoplasm inside stays balanced. So in theory, cells could survive in an acid blood environment. But every adaptation would be costly. Life would need to completely reinvent proteins, membranes, and energy systems to handle it. It wouldn't be impossible, but it would be radically different from anything we know here on Earth. It would indeed be alien. The acid in the alien films doesn't just burn through flesh. It eats straight through spaceship hulls. That suggests a superacid. These are not found in biology on Earth. They usually involve fluorine, one of the most reactive elements in the universe. Examples of these include fluoroantimonic acid. This is 10 to the 16 times stronger than sulfuric acid. So-called magic acid, a mixture of fluorosulfonic acid and antimony pentafluoride, has a pH of around -23. Hydrofluoric acid, whilst not technically a superacid with a pH of just 1, is still terrifyingly dangerous. It doesn't just burn skin, it seeps into the flesh and dissolves the bone underneath by binding the calcium. So could nature make these? On Earth? No. The chemistry is too energy intensive and fluorine is rare in living systems on Earth. But on alien worlds, things could be very different. Imagine a planet with a fluorine-rich atmosphere, volcanic vents releasing exotic gases, and evolution pushing organisms to exploit corrosive chemistry as a defense. On such a world, acid for blood might just be possible. It might even be common. Let's pause for a moment and consider containment. On a spaceship or in a lab, strong acids are stored in glass, ceramic, or fluoropolymer containers, materials that resist attack by acids. For an alien organism, veins, arteries, and hearts would need to be made of similar materials. Perhaps their tissues are built from silicon-based polymers, mimicking a ceramic-like resistance. Maybe their skin and blood vessels are lined with a fluorocarbon-like molecule, resisting even superacids. Or maybe their blood isn't just pure acid, but contains acid suspended in a protective matrix, reducing the damage until released and exposed to the atmosphere, maybe. And let's consider heat generation. When acid reacts with metal or organic matter, it releases heat. Quite a lot of heat. If a xenomorph are injured, its acid blood spraying out might just generate enough heat to ignite materials nearby. That would make for great cinema, but in real biology it could be catastrophic. The creature might cook itself from the inside if too much acid leaked or too much blood was lost. And finally, let's consider the energy cost. Making and maintaining strong acids requires an enormous metabolic input. Humans already spend a lot of energy just producing hydrochloric acid for our stomachs. Scaling that up to bloodstream levels of superacids would require a food source of an insane calorific density. The energy costs might just very well outweigh any benefit. So, let's imagine evolution has a good reason to create a superacid circulatory system. Acid for blood would be the ultimate defense. A predator bites you, they melt their own jaws off. Prey animals fight back, they risk dissolving themselves. Predator hunters with metal weapons, their weapons corrode instantly. For a spacefaring alien species, acid for blood would make them very resistant to capture as well. How do you study or dissect a creature that destroys every scalpel, cage and bullet you try to use on it? From an evolutionary standpoint, the advantage is obvious. Acid blood makes you nearly untouchable. The problem is how to evolve containment without killing yourself first. So, we've argued that acid for blood, as seen in the alien films, is wildly implausible on Earth. But biology is inventive, and who knows what could happen on an alien planet. Let's imagine a plausible evolutionary path, step by step, by which acid for blood organisms could evolve on a very different alien world. First, let's look at the planetary and geochemical conditions that might be necessary. Probably a fluorine or halogen-rich world would be required. The evolution of super-corrosive biochemistry becomes plausible only when the environment supplies the unusual raw materials necessary. A planet with abundant fluorine, chlorine, or exotic oxidizers in reasonable bioavailable forms gives the biochemistry a head start. This could come from volcanic outgassing rich in hydrogen fluoride or super-concentrated chloride salts in brines. There would probably be a persistent high acidity environment. Places like sulfuric acid hot springs or fluorine-leaching hydrothermal vents would be needed to create the evolutionary pressure to first tolerate and then exploit a corrosive biochemistry. Simple microorganisms that survive in these niches are then the starting pool for more complex organisms millions of years later. There would probably be a low competition, high predation environment. If acidic conditions exclude most competitors, an acid-tolerant lineage can diversify and become ecologically dominant. This would then become a precondition for large, complex creatures to evolve from. Evolution rarely makes a jump to a complex, fragile system. Any probable path is gradual. Let's look at it step by step. Stage 1, maybe defensive secretion to begin with. Early organisms maybe evolve glands or sacs that produce and spray acidic secretions, like the ants' formic acid. This is low risk. The acid is external and contained. Selection over time then favours more potent chemistry and thus more robust storage as predators evolve resistance. Stage 2, maybe internalization for localised protection. Some organs, maybe skin for example, become impregnated with acid-resistant compounds to form an external armour that protects from other acidic attackers. The acid for attack remains stored in isolated sacs or compartments. Stage 3, maybe functional compartmentalization around critical organs. The next evolutionary innovation could be local internalization, acid sequestered in channels near the skin or around limbs, not in general circulation. This could protect vulnerable structures and deter predators attempting attacks on these vulnerable areas. Stage 4, maybe a more distributed acid reservoir as a defensive network. Over long timescales, multiple safe reservoirs and non-reactive conduits evolve. Acid is still not free in the blood, but the organism carries a distributed arsenal that, if ruptured, is catastrophic to attackers. At this point, the species looks more like the xenomorph concept. Acid that sprays on injury, but critically it's compartmentalized and networked around the organism. Maybe not blood, but still flowing and stored around the organism. What other problems are there? For an acid system to be viable, injury response, or clotting, would need to be far more rapid and robust than ours, sealing off acid reservoirs instantly. Think of supercoagulating proteins, rapid mineral deposition, or instantaneous polymerization to plug leaks. The energy cost also needs to be addressed. Synthesizing and maintaining corrosive chemistry is metabolically expensive. The organism must have access to high-energy food sources. Quantitatively producing and storing concentrated fluorinated acids would likely consume many times the basal metabolic power of a similar non-acidic animal. Such alien creatures might also invest heavily in offspring protection, because each adult is expensive, and we might expect these organisms to be apex predators or near the top of a local ecosystem, where their defense yields a major survival payoff. Otherwise, the cost outweighs the benefits. The evolution of such complex biochemistry almost certainly requires millions to tens of millions of years. The earliest stages, like spraying external acid use, can likely appear relatively quickly. However, the deep internalization steps are a long, incremental process. In Ridley Scott's Alien films, the acid blood wasn't meant to be scientifically plausible. It was a storytelling tool. It made the xenomorph terrifying because it removed the human's last line of defense. You can't just shoot the monster. If you do, you risk burning through the hull and killing everyone on board. The acid blood traps humans between two nightmares, the alien inside and the void of space outside. Symbolically, it's genius. Even the creature's blood is hostile. Its very biology is weaponized against us. It's a metaphor for something utterly alien, something nature itself seems to reject. So, could real biology have acid for blood? Probably not in the way the alien films show it. Acids exist in nature. Ants and beetles spray them. Our stomachs make them. but no organism on Earth uses acid as free-flowing blood or has any type of acid capable of dissolving through degrading. The containment problem, the energy costs, and the sheer destructive power make it nearly impossible for organisms on Earth. And yet, life surprises us. Extremophile bacteria thrive in boiling acid pools. Biology is more inventive than we often imagine. In the right alien world, with exotic chemistry and evolutionary pressures we can hardly guess at, maybe something like the xenomorph could emerge. In the end, acid blood is scientifically implausible, but not entirely beyond imagination, which is exactly why it works so well in the Alien franchise. It feels like something that might be possible, looking just to the edge of what science allows. So what do you think? Could acid blood evolve naturally, or is it just Hollywood horror? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more Real Science of Sci-Fi.